Okay, chalo, let's take a breath. Hanji, welcome to another episode of the Not in the Clouds podcast. You are joined with Joan Singh, Asa Singh, Sadab Singh. So this week, what have you guys been watching, reading, consuming? What have you guys been up to?
A person I found, his name's Jaswinder Singh, and he's made a website called Guru Purushottam. And he has a YouTube channel. It's not got a lot of views. Like each video has got maybe 100, 200 views. But the stuff on there is golden. So I'm really surprised that it doesn't have more views. So
he is Gani Sher Singh student.
Exactly, yeah.
So I reached out to them to be on the podcast, and I think that would be good.
I loved the new perspective, because obviously for us, the base for that kind of information is Sant Mohinder Singh Ji's work, right? So it's either Guru Chetan, Hetu Mukt Ko Gyan, or Bhakti Gyan Sahaj Jog. Like, that's our basis for that kind of information. But hearing it from that perspective and how Gani Sher Singh Ji has taught him, and he has a website as well called gurpurushottam.com, and he's translated like a lot of the Guru Pratap Suraj Granth, and yeah, I was amazed. So yeah, big up that Singh. You made my week.
A couple of other websites that I find really useful. There's Kamalpreet Singh Ji's website, gurmatvichar.com. A lot of katha on there, a lot of kirtan on there, a lot of old granths on there. So he's done really well. He's been doing seva for a long time. We've also been in touch with him, and he will be blessing the podcast soon. So early spoiler.
Yeah. Legend. He's a legend as well. Like,
got a question. So it is for all, but why doesn't everyone go down that path of understanding these things or reading this Barney Grantha and stuff?
And maybe there's a language barrier, and you need a teacher, really. I don't think you can go down a lot of this without somebody guiding you of where to start, because you would get lost.
Through the invention of the internet and having, brilliant people such as Kirpal Uncle Ji, Kirpal Singh Channa, who manages the e-library, the Sri Sadhguru Jagjit Singh Ji e-library, who has put countless resources on that. Not just that, but YouTube for all those Kirtan lovers. He has put a number of videos on there, a number of audio on the e-library as well.
Unbiased as well. Every single resource you could find. I think there was a channel we was discussing, Khalsa Chronicles, where all of the references in their description of Gyani Gurbachan Singh Ji Pindrawale's work, of what they write, I think it's Gurmukh or Gurmat Prakash, in there, this is like from the 60s, right? This is that's the reference that's used.
We were very lucky to have him in West London, because a lot of the early booklets that we had at the Gurdwara were printed from him. A lot of Gurbani, when it was inaccessible at the time to be made into small pothiyan, he's done that seva. And a lot of what we see at the Gurdwara now, when we read Noe Pacha Di Salok, those little booklets that we read from are all from him.
Ugardanti Bani was very hard to come by, and it was obviously only within the Panth at that time were we printing it at mass, and him doing the seva of when Hang Singhs would come and ask him for the pothi of Ugardanti, him giving it. Immense seva. I have a lot of respect for him, for what he's doing and what he's done.
Yeah, nothing as intellectual as Juan, as always. But there's a documentary on Netflix. Actually, I can't call it a documentary. It's one of those mind-numbing shows. It's called Is It Cake? You might have seen it or come across it.
Oh, okay. Is it those ones where they make it so realistic and you can't tell?
It's quite impressive. There's this mindset of like this craftsmanship, and they're so passionate about their art of baking that literally you could give them any object, give them a mouse or whatever, and you couldn't tell the difference. Like a layman couldn't tell the difference.
Are you guys Formula One fans at all?
I follow it here and there, yeah.
Well, the extent of me being a fan is I watch the Netflix documentary when it comes out.
And I have almost finished the last season, though the one that's just come out. For them, winning seems like it's their ultimate happiness. Winning is everything to them, right? So all the team for that slight bit of happiness, what is that makeup? What is that? What do they get? Is that a dopamine hit at that point where they're, getting happiness from that? What is that?
You see Red Bull, and I think it's quite funny that Red Bull are obviously doing great at the moment, and you win one year, right? But it seems like I don't even know how long that win lasts for. Like when you're watching it, it seems like maybe 1 or 2 seconds, or maybe max a day. And then the next year it's like, oh, we have to win again. Like we have to assert dominance. So I think that Formula One example is really unique.
The concentrate of it, that it's so concentrated into that thing, and then when they do win something, it does feel massive for about or 10 minutes.
But let's break that down. Why do you think they are happy at that moment when they've achieved that?
Because they've gone through so much hard work, perseverance, struggles, and it's not like it's something that's in their control, right? So it's not in their control. The car could spin off any moment. They could get nipped by somebody else in the back, and then they could go and spin off, or something could happen to the car. Them completing 50 or 60 laps, or however many laps they have to do on that race, is very, very, the odds of it is almost as like living and dying, if you think about it. But is that the same in life? So does hard work equal happiness?
That's the expectation, isn't it? That so they've spent money financially, they've spent time, probably sacrificed things personally to try and by the end of the season win the season, and the expectation is that we're going to win. But the concept of winning isn't foreign, right? Even in Gurbani, it talks about winning this game of life.
Man jeete jag jeet. There's talking about this element of victory everywhere, isn't it? I wanted to relate that to something because it was something I was going to mention at the end of the podcast, but it relates to this because I think in one of the podcasts we spoke about like the concept of effort, and if everything's meant to be, then why put effort into it? And going back to what I was reading that from Gurpashottam, he was talking about these 6 concepts called Khat Sampati. And 2 of those I think relate to this. So one was Upramta, and another one was Tatiksha. And here Upramta means that when, and all of these 6 are essentially they're saying the base of controlling your mind, or reaching a state of meditation, or reaching a state of like samadhi. And they're saying these 2, well, there's 6, but these 2 I think relate to what you're saying, Asapadi. And those 2 kind of struck me, which was Upramta means that you make sure you're enjoying it, which hit me. I was like, okay, that's interesting that that's specifically specified, meaning you have detachment, but you never feel dejected, right? You never have that feeling of like, oh, what's the point of like that nihilism. And the other one was the Diksha, which was around endurance. So you're always like putting your best foot forward.
So I think both need a purpose, though. So both of them, you need a purpose, whether it's, you need a direction in life. Otherwise, you become aimless, right? So I'll give you an example. If I'm talking about my career goals now, you can't have career goals which are out of line of your capabilities, for example. So I can't say that I want to become a doctor next week. It's not possible because my line is IT, right? So we need to be realistic in our insights, or looking inwardly. You also have to then have a long-term, short-term, medium-term goal. These things we can't, when you connect with your manager or you connect with someone at work, they'll ask you, okay, what's your 5-year plan? Or they'll ask you, what's your short-term goals? Or, what do you want to achieve in the next 6 weeks? And all of this, I think we should apply to life as well. Otherwise, I feel even in life, we become aimless. And I feel that scrolling through Instagram or, using any of these social medias, chatting to like mates and stuff, WhatsApping, just aimlessly, because I'm not remembering my purpose at that point.
Setting realistic goals is absolutely key because, like you say, we talk about...
Says the project manager.
Sometimes we talk about, these Brahmgyanis and like you say, Johan, there are stages to being able to get to that Baikanaya stage of life. Whereas we're sort of in and out in phases, if that. right, for milliseconds. But something that Sadhguru Pratap Singh Ji says that rings true at this point is, if you want to sit for an hour, try sitting for 5 minutes first, without movement, being completely still. If you can do that, if you can bring your mind to a standstill, then you can progress forward. If you're you can't have a restless mind and be Paikanai at the same time.
Yeah, that's so true. I think that reminds me of when you hear these stories of people that have achieved that, and we don't even need to go even really far in history, like we know about Sant Harnam Singh Ji, Beni Sahib, Jade Lo Langar de Langari ne, even Sant Satnam Singh Ji, even my Ustads, Sant Nishan Singh Ji, Subhas Lakhan Singh Ji. For us, these are living examples of where we want to get to. And even though I know maybe I might not get there, right? I'm happy with that. The fact that I got to hear about these people, even that brings me a sense of happiness as well. That yeah, it can be done, and it's not like, do you know, like how you were saying about realistic objectives and like realistic goals? Like maybe right now becoming a doctor for you isn't realistic, but if it really was important for you, you could do it, right? It's not like outside the realms of possibility. But
That's true.
But sometimes with spirituality, we put these things so much outside of the realms of possibility that you're right. Why would anybody start on the path, right? Why would anybody even want to try? Because we put it outside of what seems realistic. But when you actually look at it, whether more or whether less, there's loads of people around us that have, whether for a millisecond or whether for their lifetime, have actually lived what Guru Nanak Dev Ji is talking about. And that personally brings me happiness and a slight sense of reassurance that, yeah, it's possible.
You've probably heard that Sakhi of Sadhguru Pratap Singh Ji, when somebody comes to them and they're like, "Minnu vi naam da nasha do." I want to experience naam for what it is. And Sadhguru Pratap Singh Ji gives them like a light thapada and pyar de naal. And for a good month, they can sit there, concentrate, and like completely enjoy the Maharas, naam Maharas Piyo. And then after a month, that sort of fades off, and they come back to Sadhguru Pratap Singh Ji and they're like, "Bakshish karo, it's running, give me another one."
Yeah, it's running out.
Give me another hit.
Top me up.
Yeah, top me up. So I've always had this in the back of my mind. If he wanted to, right now, like with a chutki, you could become Paikana, you could become Jivan Mukh, or like all the world's entanglements. But that's not the game. That's not like you say, Jawan, ki bani banai chahiye aur ke kamai karni. That's that.
It's so true. The story of Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji comes to mind, where I think is by Mati Das, who's in the encapsulated in the jail with them. Sacha Pasha Ji is having amb, and I think that they put the chiller on the floor, and the Sikh had a taste of their Seed Prashad, so had the chiller of the amb, and they had so much takat in them from that chiller of the amb.
Bhai Mazidas ji kehndे मैं ਹੁਣੇ ਸਾਰਾ ਕੁਝ ਦੱਬ ਦੇਣਾ ਇੱਟਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਇੱਟ ਖੜਕਾ ਦੇਣਾ. I've heard that. Yeah.
They got so much josh inside them that they said, this whole Mughal Raj, I'm going to end it now, just by having the Seed Prashad. And in the same way, we need to be lucky enough to have that same Seed Prashad of Sachapashi, because that naam, that good mantra that we are meditating upon, is that same, that Sachapashi is there. We're not giving a different mantra.
Your original question said of happiness, what is it? I think in order to try and understand what is driving us to want to be happy, is it to escape something from our lives? Is it to be in the absence of sadness? Because if that's the case, then Gurbani has a different take on it, where it's dukh daru sukh rog paya. Dukh in this instance is vichhoda. Like if you love somebody, you could take your parents, for example. As a kid, I don't know if you've ever been lost in Tesco Asda. That feeling of being lost in Tesco Asda and like looking around like, where's mum and dad? And like, yeah, that's it. In that moment of dukh, in that moment of separation, your mind is completely focused to the person that you love the most. कि कुछ भी हो जाए, मैनू अपना प्रभु जो अपनी माँ मैनू हुण मिल जावे. There's nothing else. I don't want this chocolate anymore or this Fanta.
Yeah, so true.
I just want to be reunited.
Is that a form of man? Because in the Shabad Sadhu man ka man tyago, The third line in that is Sukh dukh dono sam kar janna aur maan apmanna. So renounce that maan.
Yeah, I like the
essentially.
second line. Sukh and dukh, like pain and happiness, through like practice, it's quite easy to try and bring that to balance. It's still difficult. Like, you know, if you won £1 million lottery and to try and control your emotions is going to be a bit challenging. But man and apaman, that's like deeply rooted, right? For somebody to have a go at your ego, to like your identity, then that's a different all each other.
Kabahu jiada up chadata hai, kabahu jaye pyale. Like sada ta eh hal. There was a sadhu, and they were about to pass away, and they call their students, and they call them and they say, the students ask, sanu koi o gyan deo jo ke tusi sadon gupt koi cheez rakhi hove. Like, it's something that you've kept from us, that you haven't told us, a secret. And the sadhu says 3 things. One, in a conversation or debate, I have never been defeated. The other one was, nobody's ever been able to push me over. And the other one was, kisi ne mainu kadi dukhi nahi kita. And the student said, well, how can I do that? How can I do that? And the teacher says that you've not understood what I'm saying. The fact that you're saying, I want to do this, that's where you've gone wrong. I don't exist. Therefore, that when I'm in the darbar and somebody's trying to kick me out of the darbar, where are they going to kick me to? And he goes on and says, look, if you want to rise above these things and be forever happy, right? You're going to have to live this. And
do you know who comes to mind when you mentioned that was Sadhguru Arjan Dev Ji? I still find it incredibly, not impossible, but just incredible to think that for 5 days straight, Sacha Ji was tortured, put on a tatti tavi, having hot sand poured onto them. And it got to a stage where, you know, you do anything to your body, it will blister and like skin will fall off. And they got to a point where you could see their bones showing, and you couldn't even, like, blood wasn't even a question at this point. They'd lost so much. How can you get to a stage where you're sitting on a hot tavi and you're not screaming? And it has to be that they formed their self in that physical form didn't exist at that point, because they'd merged with the universe. They were there physically, but their mind wasn't there. And for somebody in that state where skin is just peeling off their body and they're saying "Tera kiya meetha laga," you know, it's just incredible to fathom that contentment even in that state. It takes a strong mind.
How do you install that into this generation where we are TikTok crazy, we are scrolling all day long? No, it's true.
I think you're 100% right, though, because we look for happiness externally, thinking that it's going to come from our next paycheck, or it's going to come by going to Barbados or going on holiday. But what Gurbani is saying, all he needed to do was look inside. And it's that story that you were telling, or I think, was it Alan Watts that you were narrating from? And he says, if you could dream a dream, and you could live 70 years in your dream, and eventually after it, you would end up in the same position you were at.
That comes with a level of gratitude, though, right? So then you're appreciative of where you are at that moment in time.
We don't want to admit that I am the problem of my reality, that I am the cause of the sadness in my reality, because Gurbani says, "Dadda dos na deyo kisa, dos karma apne." Don't try and lay blame to other people when it's your own karma.
I think Guru Nanak Dev Ji wanted this more than anybody, really, of that everybody's basic needs should be met in terms of shelter. Like, this is why we say deg fateh, meaning that everybody have protection and everybody have shelter and food, meaning that this was a core tenet of the Panth. But when somebody's when somebody's basic needs aren't being met, how do we say that person should be happy as well?
I've got a feeling that's why we were given the Langar hall, because in the Langar hall, not just in the UK but anywhere, right? You are sitting beside everyone, rich people, poor people, affluent people in the sense they've got businesses, people who can help others get jobs, people who can, work together on a collective item. And I think the Langar hall was given to us for that reason. I'd say, aside from it's basically giving you the fundamental of food. I know that here in Southall, especially, not the Southall Namtari Gurdwara, but there's a lot of other Gurdwara where they have small meetings, or, where people can get advice at the Gurdwara, where the lawyers go. I was actually working from a church this week, and it was really cool to see, because I just sat in the back of the church. I had a coffee, I had my laptop there, and I was working away. And in the corner of my eye, there was like a little creche set up there. So there was like, kids playing with other kids. And if I looked to my right hand side, I saw a lady getting advice from an elder. I saw other discussions being taken place, like deals being done because people were shaking hands, and they look like those affluent property types. And I was thinking, okay, if I hadn't paid for the coffee, this is almost very similar to the Langar system.
It's us causing other people in the world to be hungry. And we need to take that upon ourselves. Where Sadhguru Ram Singh Ji, Guru Gobind Singh Ji, when you read any of the Rehatname, one of the biggest things was around like seva tahel karni sareyan di, meaning that do everybody's seva. Even Guru Ram Singh Ji goes to the point of saying, even do seva of those that are trying to diss you. For those they are dissing you, they are going to get the fall of that, and those that are doing the seva, they're going to get the fall of that.
Which is why Sarab's point is really, really valid.
100%. Yeah,
Langar promotes those things, and of being able to support your community, being able to serve your community, and being able to fund it as well, right? So even if you're living an opulent lifestyle, if you've got excess cash, you can invest that back in through the Langar.
Yeah, it proves that nobody should go hungry. Ever.
Yeah.
Ever.
Within this deer, there is this fragrance. There's a gland that produces this fragrance, and the deer, trying to search for this fragrance, goes completely mad trying to find it. It doesn't realize that it's coming from itself, so it will run around completely wild, like shake its head, trying to figure out where this fragrance is coming from. And to your question about how do you make somebody realize that happiness was always within, instead of you trying to search from outside.
This concept of Jardi Kala even brings forth a whole area of language within us as well, where Savalak means one, right? Where Samundra means milk, where Swaya means to give a little bit, even though Swaya means 1 1/4. Rupa is onions, which is silver. And there's loads, like we could go on forever. Bhai Khan Singh Ji calls it Gadgaj Bolle, meaning these thundering words. And it was built into the Sikhs, where even when read Pant Prakash, Ratan Singh Pangu saying that Zakaria Khan, Nadir Shah, Ahmad Shah Abdali is asking Zakaria Khan that who are these things, right? I've tried to destroy them. I've tried to even make them extinct. Why can't I get rid of them? Zakaria Khan, even realizing the Sikh as his enemy, he's saying to them that these men are crazy. Like, they're on their horses, they sleep on their horses, they only have a Terd Kashara, Sirte Parna, they don't even have, like we care so much about Akurta, right? They didn't even have any of that. Terd Kashara, Sirte Parna, Hatte Slotter, they Kamar Kasa Karnaya. Even in the hottest of days, they're not drinking any water. I do not know how these people even survive. Like Zakaria Khan is saying this, right? And it reminded me of a Gurbani talk. Kaam pare har simriya ऐसे सिमरन है तो कि जो सानू काम पैंदा उदो बाबा सिमरन कर लेना when you're happy, then everything goes out the window.
You all know Satpal Singh from Nanak Nam, and you've heard the name. He was interviewing a lady who had been following Nanak Nam for a while, and she had been going through a chronic depression, so like 20 years, and she's shared her journey and her progression with Gurbani and spirituality through Nanak Nam. And she goes, the light bulb moment for me was the first line of Japji Sahib. And I think it was like the 5th or 6th word of Nirbhau Nirvair. And she was like, I would just repeat that over and over and over again. And that concept of Chardi Kala, when we're talking about, all you had to do was look within to realize ki man, tu jot saroop hai, apna mool pachan. Those two words of Nirbhau and Nirvair are just the what's the word? The description of Akal Purakh, the Almighty. But again, Mantu Jyot Sarup hai apna mool pachan ki, that Almighty lives inside of you as well. So what took her out of depression was realizing that she's without hatred and without fear.
Jen nirpao, jen har nirpao je aya ji, ten ka pao sab gawasi.
I think these are affirmations. So if you want to put that in modern context, woke terminology, this is affirmations, right? We got to affirm ourselves with Gurbani. And I think this is what I was getting at this morning. And I was kind of in a rut. I was understanding, well, why should we do it firstly? In my akkad, I was thinking, why do you need to read Japji Sahib every day, man? That's long. But it's affirmation at the end of the day in this new work.
And why it sometimes doesn't seem applicable is because we don't, like every single line, could you say that you knew what the translation was, or could you say that you know the meaning of it?
You know, you just find, you're just walking along and
like a line hits you.
a line comes to your head, and then I Gurbani it, or you Google it or something. Exactly. And yeah,
there's three questions, and it's about like affirmations and being able to reflect. I was listening to another podcast, and they were talking about these three questions that you need to ask yourself if you think that your life is lacking in happiness. And the first is really interesting because the question is, how well am I treating my body? Within Sikh philosophy, we have the concept of your house is your gurdwara, and treating your body well, because ultimately you want the Almighty to reside in there. So you wouldn't pollute your house if you wanted Maharaji's bead to come to your house, or if you wanted a Santa to come to your house, you'd tidy it up. Same with your mind, right? You wouldn't be doing nindya, chugli, or harboring hatred for somebody. So how well are you treating your body? So spiritually as well as physically. Are you doing your exercise? Are you getting a vitamin D? And then the second one was, who am I sharing my time with? And that was a really cool one, because about the concept about community. Are the people around you pushing you to become a better version of you, right? And this relates to being able to have personal goals for your growth.
I think personally, when it comes to this podcast, it's really cool hanging around with you guys, because it gets you thinking differently from the corporate mindset that you've got in your 8 to 5 job or whatever it is. Then you got your family and those, the worries or the joys that brings in a different level. Yeah. And then this is almost like a version of Satsanga.
That point is completely valid. There was quite a prominent Harvard study, and they tracked multiple individuals over the course of 60 years. And the guy who ran the study, George Balint, I think his name was George Balint, he said, I could summarize 60 years worth of data into one word, and that word was love. And he said people who had solid relationships in their life lived longer, were more successful, were more productive, and had fewer addictions and problems. And the third question is, what are you working on right now? And it's about that thing of having the right mindset in your field of work. And they talked about this mindset of being a craftsman and not a passionate. So what they meant by that was, don't be somebody who looks to the world to see what the world can offer you, but instead be a craftsman and see what you can offer the world. There's a Gurbani tuk that came to mind when we were planning this, is Simro, Simar, Simar, Sukh Pavo. And I've always had a thing with this tuk, ki, depending on, if we're talking about manifestation, depending on what you're thinking about, if you're thinking negatively of the world, then that's what you're going to manifest.
So are you a manifestation of your thoughts? Is that what you're saying?
The mind is such a powerful thing that to the world, what could seem like such a tough situation, the Guru has blessed us with those tools that still we could be happy and genuinely happy, not like faking it.
And look at a biological level, look at the placebo effect. The fact that the placebo effect exists proves the fact that your mind can have a biological influence on if you're healthy or not. I read a study, and I don't know how scientific the study was, but they basically, at a biological level, any emotion that we feel only lasts for 90 seconds. After the 90 seconds, what you choose to do with that anger is completely in your control. So if you choose to keep reflecting on it and diving deeper into it, adding masala to the situation in your mind.
Yeah, fuel to the fire.
Fuel to the fire, yeah. If you start doing that, then it's just, it's a rabbit hole.
So you personally, how do you simplify your process then?
It's being aware of it, isn't it?
That's why we need the Guru.
When you become angry, at that point, if you take Bhagat Faridji as your Guru, who are telling you Frida Burida Palakar Gussa Manana Handai.
I'll tell you something that I try and do. So I get told something's happened. I pause, and I don't. I try not to react straight away, but I mean sometimes I do, of course. But in every situation, I try to pause, and even at work now, I will listen to what people are saying. Maybe listen twice, pause, and not even respond in the moment. I might even write down that feeling, write down what's going on, and then come back to it. And the next meeting, I might turn around and say, well, this is what I think.
Do you know that pause is so important? And they interviewed a bunch of architects. And they asked them, how do you stay so playful? Because you have to be creative as an architect. How do you stay so creative in your role? And the architects basically said, we allow ourselves enough time to be in this playful state of design.
Yeah.
And what that essentially means is what John Cleese distills it down to. So as a manager or anybody in your profession, take as long as you need to make a decision.
Take a step back, take a breath, and think about what makes you happy and what is your goal in life.
Equilibrium.
Yeah, ikigai.
Ikigai.
All of our ikigai is Dhan Guru Nanak.
So, guys, what is your interesting fact for the week? I'm not going to go to Asa because I know he's way too ready for this. So, Juan Singh ji?
I was reading Bulle Shah, and it's never something I really thought about. And Bulle Shah, for anybody that doesn't know, is a poet, and I didn't know what period he was from in terms of when he was alive. He was a Sufi poet, and I didn't know he was actually a Samakali, like he was alive at the same time as Guru Gobind Singh Sacha Pashaji. There's a lot we can learn from his poetry, but that was my fact that I found interesting.
So I found out recently that in the winter months, cows give less milk. Or in a country, what they do is they put VR goggles. VR goggles on the cows, and so the cows think that they're in an open field and it's summer shining. And they've shown that by them wearing these VR virtual reality goggles, the milk yield has gone up and the cows are happier. I don't know how you measure happy cows, but milk yield they can measure.
What was
Uranus?
Uranus.
What was Uranus's original name?
No idea. I'm not going to attempt.
Georgium Sidus.
George.
The original name of Uranus was George.
Was the guy that found it named George?
There you go.
Yeah. Mad.
I mean, you've got this far in the episode, so we've got to thank you for one, listening to the episode, and two, the continuing support. So I'm not going to ask you to like, I'm not going to ask you to subscribe, and I'm not going to ask you to share this. However, if you've taken anything away from this that makes you happy, keep it inside and make sure that you work on that happiness.